The Dorkening and all affiliated shows are not intended for anyone under the age of 18. The following may contain discussions or scenes that have adult situations, graphic violence, nudity, strong sexual content, and graphic language. This show is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Persons under 18 will not be admitted.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another kick-ass episode of Still Toking with. You already know who I am, I would hope by now. I'm very excited about tonight's show. Over 7 years, we've had all walks, all kinds, from authors to musicians to actors and actresses. But I think this is the first time we've actually had a biochemist. I'm not going to steal anybody's thunder yet, so I'm going to introduce the other half that's here with me this evening on the road, the flashy one himself, Mr. Jeffrey Mark.
Hi, everybody, and forgive the jowl shot. I am in iconic Mel's Diner in the heart of Hollywood, attached to the Hollywood Museum, because I have an interview with the BBC and an event at the Hollywood Boulevard after we do this. But so happy to be with you, and so happy to have this guest, a biochemist indeed. Being a nice Jewish boy, I was always taught to address people by their honorific. So I will introduce him that way, but we're going to call him Dave because he asked us to. Please welcome to our show, Dr. David Rasnick, Ph.D. Welcome, sir.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you guys. Y'all look very... a lot of fun to be with.
Well, we try, even though the discussion tonight is more of a serious one, which we really enjoy doing those shows because I don't think enough people do shows like that, the serious subjects, and for everybody that's tuning in or even listening to this later, the subject behind tonight's show, as we had said, David is a doctor. He's a biochemist. He's worked on developing enzyme inhibitors for conditions ranging from arthritis to cancer. And cancer is probably going to be one of the majority topics that we talk about this evening, because there's a lot to talk about behind David's story. Real quick, David, before we get into a lot of questions and things like that, can you give our viewers and listeners just a little background on you? Like, we know you're a biochemist and all that. A little bit more of a background.
Yeah. Let's see. We got, 2-3 hours? Is that right?
I can't hold this phone up that long.
Anyway, all right. I didn't start out wanting to be a scientist or anything. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid. And I went to Georgia Tech to get a degree in aerospace engineering so I could be an astronaut. But my eyesight wasn't good enough for that. And I got drafted and went to Vietnam, 69, 70. I came back and then went back to Georgia Tech, no more astronaut stuff. And I took a couple of 2-day long exams to help me figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And to make it short, one of them said that I had, with engineers, I'm likely very similar to an engineer, with religion or other things like that down at the bottom. And with artists, scientists, musicians, believe it or not, that it had me way up high, very likely, shared that sort of sentiment. And then the second test that I took showed the likelihood of success in these various areas. And of course, down at religion and things like that, had down at the bottom. And with the arts, it was down at the bottom. And with engineering in the middle, but scientists had me very, very high up there with biologists and chemists and things like that. So I went for it. I got a degree in biology, very, very big switch, and took a course in organic chemistry, 3-quarter course in that. I was really good at it, and I got a BS degree in biology. And I kept going. I got another BS degree in chemistry itself, and I was on the right track. No more going to the moon. And I asked the thesis advisor if he thought I could get a master's. He said, go for a PhD. So I went for a PhD, got it in 3 years. Right after I got my PhD, went to Abbott Laboratories, joined up with another brand new PhD, and they hired us to set up the chemistry group in their diagnostics division just north of Chicago. Was there 2 years. Then I left there and moved to San Francisco and started my first biotech company. I've had 3 biotech companies, and they're very, very successful. And that was in the San Francisco Bay Area in 1980. And of course, AIDS started. It wasn't called AIDS then, wasn't known, but it was around 1980, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York. And they called it GRID at the very beginning for gay-related immune deficiency. And I learned a lot of this stuff I'm going to tell you now a lot later, but I want to tell what the story is. As early as 1982, the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, understood correctly that what was called GRID, gay-related immune deficiency, later changed to AIDS, they renamed it, was primarily in chronic drug-using gay men and IV drug-using heterosexual men. And women were just not getting AIDS, you see. And here I was right in San Francisco, and I noticed there, in the Castro, that's where the AIDS was, and that's where the gay guys were. Across the street, it wasn't. And so I was thinking, this is kind of weird. And I met once a month. We had this little gathering at the University of California, San Francisco, where the academics, the biotech people, pharmaceutical folks, we got together once a month for a seminar. Then we went out to a Chinese restaurant to chit chat. We formed the occasional collaboration. We did this now for several years. And then it was either 1985 or 86, I can't remember exactly which year it was. I realized that AIDS is not behaving at all like a contagious disease. Remember, 1984, April 23rd, 1984, is when Margaret Heckler, Secretary of Health and Human Services, was called out to bring Robert Gallo on a press conference and said he found discovered the probable cause of AIDS. I remember this very clearly. And so here we all, okay, now we know what AIDS is caused by. It's this retrovirus. So we all started trying to figure out how we're going to solve it as individuals. But it was clear, and I was doing that for a short while. But since it wasn't behaving like a contagious disease, I had, it was something wrong. So one of those outings at this Chinese restaurant, I brought this issue up that AIDS is not behaving like a contagious disease. And guess what? Nobody would talk to me. That's what my light bulb moment. Here we are. You've already get a feel for me. I love to yak, yak, yak. That's typical among scientists, And then as soon as everybody clammed up what I just mentioned, that it's not behaving like a contagious disease, boy, that was a shocker. And that's when I started looking into it deeper, really studying this AIDS stuff and finding all these books and everything to try to understand what the world's going on. All right, so anyway, that's when my first really big shocker. And then Peter Duesberg, professor at UC Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley, a world authority on retroviruses, HIV is a retrovirus. He'd written a invited article in Cancer Research in 1987, where it was like a legal document, point for point, how AIDS is not contagious, HIV and retroviruses are not contagious. And then after that, he gave all these points, the World Authority on Retroviruses. And then right after that, the guy who had the Outstanding Investigator Grant, a member of the National Academy of Sciences, probably would have gotten the Nobel Prize, lost all of his money overnight and was shut down. He was a full professor, so they couldn't fire him. And so that was another kicker. And then finally, I left the pharmaceutical biotech industry for good in 1996. And I left San Francisco, went over to UC Berkeley, joined up with Professor Peter Duesberg. And then that's when we got together, and we worked together for 2-3 decades on AIDS and cancer. Peter wanted to work on cancer for a long time, but it was sort of a blessing in disguise when he lost all his funding and everything, because now he went on his first sabbatical to Germany to start studying Theodore Boveri. We can go into him later if you want, his chromosomal imbalance theory of cancer, about how unbalanced chromosomes cause cancer. So he went to Europe to study that. And I went to the library to understand this stuff called aneuploidy, unbalanced chromosomes, and how they cause cancer. All right, so we did that now for about 20 years. We worked on this stuff, but it only took us 10 years to prove that Theodore Boveri, guy who published a book in 1914 on how unbalanced chromosomes cause cancer, and he was right. And Peter and I proved his theory. Peter did the experimental stuff, and I did the theoretical aspects of it. Mm-hmm. And we had to get our own funding and from individuals, and then. But this is one of the blessings when you have horrible things happening in your life, like SARS-CoV-2 and this COVID hoax. It was a hoax, everybody. COVID is a hoax. AIDS, contagious AIDS was a hoax, HIV. That's why I'm so popular these days around the world with lawyers on 4 continents and everywhere else, because they're all starting to learn about Anthony Fauci, his AIDS, his SARS, his Zika, Ebola. All of those are bogus, totally bogus. And we knew it for a long time and went public about it, but only because of COVID, the global thing, that's why we're here today. It's because all of us who are fighting these things for decades are talking to people all over the world, being asked to talk about this stuff. All right.
Right.
And of course, I wrote several books, and one on cancer for cancer researchers, another AIDS novel for the public, so it wouldn't be so technical for them to understand what AIDS really was and what it wasn't. And then I started in 2014 my latest book, The Outsider, The Personal Odyssey and the Essence of Cancer. And I wrote this book intentionally to make the cancer story accessible to a broad public. You know,
Right.
you could be you could have a Ph.D. You could just be a journal person. You could be a lawyer. Didn't matter. I used straight language, you know, but I didn't want to leave anything out. And it's a very thorough book about what cancer really is. It goes all the way back over 100 years, almost 125 years or so, and tell that story all the way through up to the present. And so I'm going to take a break right now so I can catch my breath, and you guys can.
Well, no, I mean that's perfect, because the first 20 minutes of the show is where you really grab everybody's attention. So this, you know, now they're going to be like, wait, no, don't stop talking. Tell us more about what the hell you're talking about here. So I mean, now that you've come out with this book, just prior to that, you were kind of shunned because of your findings.
40 years, 4 decades.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you think
not just the cancer, but with the AIDS stuff, starting all the way back with the AIDS and all the way through, you know,
right.
And we're not even Peter and I are not even cited anymore in the scientific literature because the institutions control everything.
Right.
You know?
That was where I was going with it. Do you think that you guys are being not silenced, but shunned or exiled because it's such a huge billion-dollar industry on the opposite spectrum?
Well, you got one thing wrong. It's $1 trillion industry.
I was trying to be nice. I was trying to be nice.
Literally, AIDS is $1 trillion industry. Cancer is $1 trillion industry.
Right. Mr. Mark, do you want to weigh in on this? Because you look like you have a ton of questions running through your mind right now. Either that or your diuretic kicked in.
No, not my diuretic. So I was in New York, sir, in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I was a bad boy back then. My drug dealer died of AIDS. He was number 3 when they first started counting bodies.
Wow.
I got involved very, very early on. A name I hope you know, Dr. Matilda Krim,
I know the name, yeah.
was a close friend of mine. And I helped her through my entertainment world to raise the money that she took to Elizabeth Taylor to start AmFAR. There have to be some folks watching the show who are wondering, are you saying, to say that AIDS is a hoax and COVID is a hoax, how do you speak to the people who died, lost people who died? When you say a hoax, do you mean how it was handled or that it exists at all?
How it was defined.
All right.
How it was defined. The people.
Are you saying, sir, that AIDS could not be transmitted from one person to the next?
Absolutely true. And I've got the documents, 40 years of information on my website, davidrasnick.com. You can look at cancer. You can click on AIDS. You'll see, and I got the documents, tons and tons of the CDC's own documents. Peter's written a book about this stuff. We've published lots of papers on it. We've had conferences on it. People did die. Anthony Fauci was brought in November of 1984 after Margaret Heckler's press conference earlier in '84. And his job was to turn a whole list of non-contagious diseases that have nothing to do with each other into an infectious disease. And so then they came up with 29 unrelated diseases that only became AIDS is if a person tested antibody positive for HIV and later they did a PCR test. And if they came positive, they no longer had cervical cancer or pneumonia or this, they had AIDS. If they tested negative, then they went back and had one of these other 29 diseases, you see. And
so a generation of gay men died. It's just coincidence that this all happened. It wasn't HIV, it wasn't AIDS, that's not what killed them. Other things killed them. And you're saying that the medical mainstream blamed it on AIDS. Is that what I'm trying to understand from you, sir?
No, they blamed it on a virus. They turned drug diseases initially. See, they added all these other diseases later, but initially when it was called GRID, gay-related immune deficiency, but they wanted to broaden it out, so they changed that name, and then they called it AIDS for acquired immune deficiency, which included anybody and everybody, all right? And as I said earlier, the CDC understood as early as 1982 that this thing that was happening that was punishing and killing gay men was IV drug use. I don't mean that was poppers. It was amyl and butyl nitrite inhalants, recreational drug use that these guys were doing. And it was the IV drug use in heterosexuals, all right? And
that's what brought on Kaposi sarcoma, sir?
Kaposi sarcoma, the nitrite inhalants and things like it's known. Not only that, but a whole bunch of different kinds of drugs. And it wasn't real Kaposi sarcoma. It looked like Kaposi sarcoma. And they just keep adding these lists. By the way, you can go to Peter's book. You can even download the whole thing from my website on the homepage. I think it's up there. And you can read that
in the show
story.
notes.
That story. He's written at least two books on AIDS, and tells that whole story from beginning to end. And so it's the thing that what Peter and I and others do. We have everything documented. We have all the CDC stuff. We have all the literature, the information, year after year after year. And so on my website and Peter Duesberg's website and our books and his book, you can look it up. Don't take my word for it. I'm summarizing it because we only have an hour or whatever it was.
Right.
I am going to have to respectfully disagree with you on some of the, not everything. Some of the things you're saying, I agree with you, sir. But on some of the things you're saying, I was way too involved at ground zero of this stuff.
I'd like to hear those. I'd like to hear examples. Yeah.
I think privately, I'll be happy to tell you. I don't think our audience really cares one way or the other. One of the things we agree on this show is not to debate things. So I'm not going to debate. I'm just going, because we don't do that here.
Okay.
I'm just going to respectfully disagree with some of the things you're saying.
Oh, that's fine. I think that's good. I'm tired of people agreeing with everybody.
Yeah, but I
agree with that.
I agree with that.
Intelligent grown-ups should be able to disagree and do it respectfully and keep civil discourse and talk.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's who I am. And I would be untrue to myself and the people I've known to not disagree. And I'd be a jerk to disagree in any way that would hurt your feelings. So I'm not a jerk, and you're a guest on our show. So, you know.
But you shouldn't change your mind regardless of what I say, because it's too superficial. It's just too on the surface. You'd have to dig deep into the data. So if you agreed with everything I said and you didn't really, or if you changed your mind instantly because of what I said, there's something wrong.
Well said. Well said.
To dig deeper, you know?
Well said. Very well said. So, folks, I do want to point out real quick. So we have, things that David is saying and things that Mr. Jeffrey Mark is saying. Some agree, some disagree. All that information, if you're inclined to find out for yourself and make your own conclusion on what we're discussing, check the show notes up above, down below, depending on where you're watching or listening to us, because the links are there. So if you're one of those people that says, I disagree with everything this gentleman just said. I'm going to go research it. Please do. Or if you say, I agree with everything, but I disagree with some things, research it, draw your own conclusions. That's what makes us human in Americans.
Absolutely.
You know, we just celebrated the 250th anniversary of America last month, folks. We had 5 shows for it. You are your own person. We do not have to agree on everything. But at the end of the day, we all want to just get along. It's very simple. So we're going to.
And you see how the 3 of us are handling a disagreement. Guys, to do when you have a disagreement, get along.
Time now, though, we're wasting time talking about disagreement.
Right.
I think we respect each other and everything.
Yes.
You know.
So we're gonna move a little bit forward here into the cancer side of things. Tell us a little bit about that part of your journey.
Okay. Like I say, when 1996, when I joined it with Peter, he left to go to Germany to start doing experimental work on animals and cell culture to try to prove or disprove Theodore Boveri, who I'll get into in a moment here, his theory about how unbalanced chromosomes cause cancer. That's what he did. I stayed back at UC Berkeley, and I went to the library and read, learned a lot of things, the history, like my book. I even put that history in the book about the things that are important that I learned about this. But historically, back when they had very good light microscopes and even good cameras to take pictures of cells on microscopic slides. This goes back to the late 1800s. David Hanselman, which he's on my website. All this stuff that I'm telling you is on my website, by the way. And David Hanselman had been examining over 10,000 cancer cells under the microscope. He drew pictures of what he saw. He took a lot of photographs and pictures of the cells, the cancer cells. And he was very, he knew a lot what normal cells look like, all the different tissues and everything. And then he looked at the cancer cells, over 10,000 different cancer cells. No 2 were identical. You know, they had our normal cell. We have about 20 to 40 trillion cells in our body. And we have 46 chromosomes, 23 from your mother, 23 from your father. The chromosomes are the genes. They're like volumes, like a dictionary, Oxford English Dictionary, 23 volumes. It has anything that was ever written in English. Those words are in those 23 volumes. Well, we have 23 volumes called chromosomes, and we have about 20,000 genes that are distributed among those chromosomes. And mice and humans, we have different numbers. They have 40 chromosomes and we have 46. But we have the same genes. 99% of mouse genes, human genes, and most mammalian genes we share alike are identical. 99%. And so you don't hear scientists asking the obvious questions. The genome projects reveal that. But guess what? You never hear a discussion of. I'm a scientist. I haven't heard any scientists except myself bring it up. How do those identical mouse genes, 20,000 mouse genes and 20,000 human genes, how do they know to make a mouse or a human or a giraffe or anything else? Think about that. And yet, virtually all of cancer research over the past, since the 1950s, but especially since the 1970s, have been looking for specific genes that cause cancer. You've heard of oncogenes, cancer genes, gene mutations, that a gene will do this and do that. You mutate it with some sort of carcinogen. It's all been gene since certainly since the 1970s. They're starting to back away from that now because some of the leading mainstream cancer researchers realize they got it wrong and they admit it. They've never found a cancer-causing gene yet to this day. A number of independent people, it's in my book. I quote them specifically in my book. All right. Now, the public doesn't know that. They don't hear it. They don't get to hear what I knew as a scientist for 40 years, they didn't get to hear what I have to say, what I'm telling you folks tonight. I've known for 40 years, and I'm not the only one. Lots of other fields are very, very similar like that. So anyway, we've got all of these genes, but they're our genome, our chromosomes are like a biological dictionary. They are not an instruction manual. And people had thought that the genes were instruction manuals, you see, but they're not. It's just a dictionary. That's why the mice have the same genes that we do, but we use those genes to make humans. The mice use those same genes to make a mouse. How that's done, nobody has a clue. It's a mystery of the highest magnitude, And so that's an astounding thing right there. Think about that. And people have known this for a long time. But even scientists won't talk about it because it disrupts everything. You see, we've spent trillions of dollars over the decades trying to come up with specific small molecules that the pharmaceutical company, which I used to do when I was a chemist, synthesize these molecules, small synthetic molecules, to inhibit this enzyme, inhibit this receptor, or whatever. And they're still doing it to this day, hoping that the diseases that we have are molecular. And most of them are not. They're not molecular.
So what do you think they are, sir?
Well, they're a body's disruption. I mean, for example, if you get poisoned, it has nothing to do with your genes. It has to do something that's added to your body, or you're not eating the proper diet, or you broke your arm, or you came across a carcinogen. You smoke cigarettes, for 20 or 30 years. Lo and behold, you get lung cancer or something, and you can, like in the wintertime, there used to be seasonal flus and everything. Guess what? So-called viruses and these bacteria around all the time. They don't just go away in the summer and come back in the winter. We change our environment, and if you're in the equator, it doesn't change seasonally, because you don't have seasons. You see, so I mean, there's many, many, many things that happen to people, and have many reasons for that to happen. And yet, if you're in this multi-trillion-dollar healthcare industry, which is a misnomer, it's not a healthcare. An incurable disease is what money is made of. Why do you think the country that spends the most money on healthcare in the world, the United States, has the poorest people? We have an accelerating rate of cancer. It's accelerating, going up, and it has been now for a few decades, and it just keeps going up. And now it's skyrocketing since COVID, since the SARS-CoV-2 injections. So, I mean, I'm going on and on and on, but I give you a chance to respond or ask questions or say, wait a minute, Dave, wait a minute.
Well, wait a minute, Dave. No, I'm just kidding.
Good. Give me a break and catch my breath.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're just smiling there, Jeffrey. You have, like, I see the smoke coming out of your ears.
No. Let's be fair. I agree with some of what he's saying and disagree with some of it. I think for a very long time now, there was a time when it was illegal to advertise medications that were not over the counter. And it was, I don't know if it was ever illegal, but it was thought to be immoral for doctors and attorneys to advertise their services. A good doctor, you'd find him by word of mouth. Since things got deregulated to the point where these things could happen, I do believe the tail is wagging the dog. I think it is heinous the way Big Pharma sells medications directly to the public, as opposed to letting doctors decide what their patients might actually need. I think that's very, very wrong. I don't like or agree with how our medical industry is we're making very poor people because of how we handle it in this country. I don't think we handle it well. The problem of having a discussion like this is I'm not an MD and I'm not a PhD. I I get my nose out of joint when I hear people say, well, I've done the research. Well, having read stuff doesn't mean you understand what you've read or that you read the right things. I can say that Ethel Merman had 4 breasts, and somewhere online I will find someone who wrote an article that agrees that Ethel Merman had 4 breasts, and I can go, see, I did the research. So I don't like to call out someone with a PhD who has the kind of education our guest has. I don't have it. I can only address the things that bother me, like big pharma and what everything I just said. So it isn't a matter of smoke coming out of my ears. It's a matter of I don't want to come across as a jerk or a know-it-all because I don't know it all. I can only respond to what I think I know. And, like I said, about 2/3 of what the doctor just said, I agree with. And 1/3 I don't. But
I'm pleased.
But I'm just Jeffrey Mark. Who the hell am I?
That exactly. Who the hell are you? No, just who invited you? No, I'm just.
Let me interrupt just for 1 minute to tell you something. Tell you something real quick. We scientists are almost always wrong. We talk about literally in the literature. Most of the scientific literature is wrong. And this has been known for a long time. I even have that in my book, and it's been documented. A fellow out in California and some other people have done this. Science is not like engineering. Engineers, they can put billions of dollars to work to build these things, and they work together. It's very, very reliable, And too many people think in terms of that scientists and engineers are the similar. No, scientists have more in common with artists and musicians than they do with engineers.
It's why it's called the practice of medicine.
Yeah, well, medicine, that's separate. I mean, science is people asking questions. We ask questions. And most of the answers we come up with are wrong. They're absolutely wrong. We're lucky if we get really 2 or 3 substantial things right in our professional career. And I've been one of the lucky ones. I think I've gotten 3 right, that. So, and of course, that's what you talk about a lot. And the other thing of it is like in my book here, I provide a wealth of evidence in plain language in the book. And you can go to my website and you get the actual documents down. You don't have to agree with it. The key is once you make these assertions or claims, back it up with evidence, and that's what I've been doing my whole professional life. We can't do that here on this program. That's why I keep pushing my website. Go to my website, click on this, go to that, get all these volumes and all this literature and stuff, and the book that I sent. That I've just published. So I agree. I understand what you're saying.
So I do. I want you to do me a favor and clarify something, because I'm sure a lot of our viewers and listeners probably don't really understand what a chromosomal imbalance is.
Yes.
Could you touch a little bit on that and tell us what is a chromosomal imbalance?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Like Homo sapiens. Remember I said mice and humans, we have the same identical genes, but they're divided into volumes. The mice have 20 volumes, of which 20 come from the mother, 20, and those volumes are called chromosomes. All right. And the chromosomes, like my little finger here, they're linear. They're strings of DNA that Watson and Crick discovered back in 1955, and they go very, very long. I think if you put them end to end, all the DNA in your cell end to end, it's taller than I am. If you were to put it, think about that. Now this stuff gets crammed up and folded teeny tiny little bit into cells that you can't see with your eye without a microscope, and it's inside the nucleus of a cell, and it's all in there. I mean, it crammed in there. I mean, that's incredible to think about that. All right, and let's see where else is going with this. So anyway, we have these informations on our chromosomes, and we humans have 23 from the mother, 23 from the father, for 46. We have 20 to 40 trillion cells. That we undergo something like 10,000 to 20,000 trillion cell divisions in a lifetime, and yet all of those cells in our body, except for rare occasions, they have identically the same combination of chromosomes. My fingers are the chromosomes, and they look like little bow ties if you take a picture, because when they're dividing, these two, the 23 from mother, 23 from father, they come together, look like that, and they're connected. It looks like the knot in the bow tie. And then those chromosomes are, when the cell divides, first of all, you got 46, all right? Then you multiply them by 2, so that you get, because you're going to divide one cell into 2, so that you have to double all your chromosomes, such that when your cell divides and it pulls the chromosomes apart like that, and like this, they're pulling them apart, then you get exactly 46 and 46 in those cells. And it does tens of thousands of trillions of times. That shows you how stable those things are. All right. Now, you see, now cancer cells never, no two cancer cells have the same combination of chromosomes. Once they get out of balance, fortunately, when a cell gets, from whatever, X-rays, cosmic radiation, poisons, asbestos, whatever, that disrupts that separation of chromosomes, those cells usually die, and they're replaced by new ones. It takes decades. It takes about, it takes decades for a solid cancer, which are all aneuploid. Now, the aneuploid chromosomes are when they're no longer balanced. You got your 46 and they pull them, you get, let's say you have your 92 and then you get your 46 over here and 46 over there. That's your normal cell. All right. Cancer cells never have the right balanced chromosomes. Every time they try to divide, they have to do something, get the geometry right, and it almost always fails. That's why it takes decades, and to get these unbalanced chromosomes to divide. And yet they're not the same number going to each one. Every one that divides is a different combination of chromosomes that never existed on the planet before. And you can look at under the microscope and you can color code these things and you'll look at it. There'll be big chromosomes. There'll be 3 over here, 1 over there, and you'll have 3 or 4 of them. They're clipped in different places and stitched back together again. They're called marker chromosomes. And these things just keep going. It's like shuffling a deck of cards and hoping one day they'll all be in the right order. You see, you can't do it. The universe hasn't been around long enough to shuffle a deck of cards once you've got it all mixed up and scrambled. They're not the order they come when you buy the pack of cards, and you shuffle them your whole life. They'll never come back. All right, the same way with unbalanced chromosomes. Okay, and those unbalanced chromosomes, the thing is that the cell that has more, they're always damaged. These aneuploid cells are always damaged. They're not nearly as healthy as our normal cells. But the one that has more chromosomes in it is more healthy than the one that has fewer. That's why over a course of time, over years, there'll be a gradual group of these aneuploid cells, meaning unbalanced chromosomes, which their total number just keeps rising. Normal is 46, and they'll just keep rising. Sometimes they'll double up, go to 90 something, and then they'll start coming back down. They typically, over decades, will wind up on an average of around 70 chromosomes or something like that instead of 46. But it's a broad spread in there. And no two of those cells are alike, but then they're there, all right? Now, these things, like I said, are damaged. But at some point, and this is a serious issue that we'll have to talk about therapy and the cancer therapy. Before we leave this program, we got to talk about the harms of the cancer therapy. Another thing about mice and humans, about 2 out of 3 mice get cancer in a lifetime. About 2 before COVID, before they started increasing cancer with the injections. 2 out of 3 humans get cancer in a lifetime, but a mouse lives 2 to 3 years, and a human lives maybe 80 years. So what's going on there? Well, the thing is that the mice chromosomes look like checkers, where our chromosomes look like chess pieces. So it's much easier to substitute mouse chromosomes for the balance even though they're unbalanced, but they have the little bow tie in the same place. They're all about the same length. So even if you have them differently and not in the right order, they'll still divide. And yet they're unbalanced. You can make them unbalanced. and that imbalance eventually leads to cancer. Same thing with people. But the reason we're able to live as long as we do is because we have chess pieces instead of checkers for chromosomes. And the Galapagos tortoise lives to almost 200, almost, what is it? I forget what it is, 150 to 200, over 200 years, something like that, Galapagos tortoise.
Something like that, yes.
Many more chromosomes, and they range from the microscopic to the very big, you see. And I think historically, I put it in my book, I think there's only 2 cases of cancer in a Galapagos tortoise, as long as they've been looking. Because it's just too difficult for the unbalanced chromosomes to turn into a tumor. I think it's probably a good point for me to take a break, a breath. Let you guys.
Well, you were starting to tell us that you were serious, that you wanted before the program was over to talk about how cancer treatments are actually harming people.
Yes, I'm glad you.
That was the point.
Yes. Yes.
So please tell us about it.
Well, okay. The idea is that, remember, they're based on the idea that cancer cells have bad genes. You know, cancer-causing gene or mutation. They've looked for oncogene, never found any to this day. They don't have any, all right? But all of their molecules, all of the drugs, all the chemotherapy and all that, cancer radiation for cancer, that's a known carcinogen, has been known ever since people understood what radiation was, all right? So that's one reason why that's very dangerous. You're not, all you're doing is helping the cancer. When you have, look at my hands up here, the top hand up here, let's say that's a measure of the health, the human that has cancer, all right? This bottom hand down here is the health. The higher up you go, the healthier they are. And this one down here is the health of the cancer, and this is the health of the person that has the cancer. Because our cells and bodies and tissues are much healthier than the cancer cells, all right? And that's one reason why we live so long, and that most of the cancers go away on their own anyway. Our body just defeats them. Now, when you start taking cancer chemotherapy and or radiation, guess what you're doing? The cancer goes down, its health, really, really fast. It disappears really quickly. But guess what? This is your health too. The chemo and the radiation and everything is very toxic, you know, and it's getting worse over the years. And now you're like this, but guess what? Your cells can never get immune to carcinogens. They can't, all right? But the cancer cells can, because they're like bacteria. Every one of them is different. It's a single cell organism. So they can get resistant to anything, like a bug can, all right? So now you have to stop the chemo and the radiation before you kill the patient. Now the health starts coming back. The person's health slowly increases, but guess what? The tumor in about a year or 2, something like that, guess what? The difference between your health and that tumor health, it's not like this anymore. You're as sick as a dog, you know, and the cancer is a lot healthier compared to where it was before you started getting therapy. All right. Now it's starting to get an advantage. You see, and if you keep getting therapy, you know, your health keeps going down and you cannot hurt the cancer anymore. That's why chemo and radiation don't work on the same tumor that they treated the first time around. They're immune to it. They've totally been wiped out, and you have a whole bunch of cells now that are immune to the therapy that's killing you.
You've told us what's bad. What's a good way to treat it?
Oh, there's lots of ways. Let's get into to Coley. William Coley is in my book. William Coley was an oncology doctor in a New York hospital in the late 1800s in New York City. And there was a patient, I can't remember the guy's patient, his name is in my book though, who had this sarcoma on his jaw. And he kept getting it treated and surgically removed for a number of times by this fellow named Ewing, another doctor named Ewing. And one day, he kept coming back. The same tumor kept coming back, and the guy had to keep removing it. And one day, the patient had a high spiking fever. I mean, he got, I forget what the bacteria was, and he had a very, very high fever. And it happened to him twice for a long, long time. And his cancer started disappearing in hours. And in days, it was gone. And it didn't come back. And Coley found out, he didn't know about, he wasn't around when that happened, but he heard the story and he wanted to find this guy. And it took him, I think, 7 years, and he found this fellow, and he was still healthy. You can see the scar where the surgery was to remove the tumor, but he's perfectly healthy. So what Coley did, he went back and he started infecting other cancer patients with bacteria. And he was curing people with this stuff. He was also killing people. He was curing more than he was killing, because the infections, a live bacteria can kill you too, you know.
Right.
So then he developed what he started using killed bacteria, and he came up with two different ones, Serratia marcescens and pyogens. I forget what it was, streptomyces, but not something pyogens. And these two bacteria, and he treated people with this. And he went for years doing this, and people have been using his techniques all over the world, and they still are, except in the United States. And his daughter wrote a book, and I think she might have died recently, but she wrote a book. She gathered up all the data of where these coletoxins, they also call them mixed bacterial toxins, where they were used and the outcomes of all of these things. All right. So, and in her book, in general, on average, people, the 5-year survival rate, they use it, chemotherapy, radiation, they also use it. That's the typical thing. How many people, what fraction of the people survive, what I say, 6 years? Something like that, whatever it is. 6-year survival rate, okay? How many of them survive that period of time? Well, Coley's toxin, 50%. She documented around the world where people are using his method. 50% of the people that had cancer were treated with it, survived for that 6-year period. All right. Guess how many people survive chemo and radiation to this day in the United States? The 5-year survival rate, 2 to 3%. That hasn't gone up. It's actually gone down. 2 to 3% to this day. Coletoxins, 50% survival for 5 years. So that is quietly, it's inexpensive. You're disrupting $1 trillion industry if you let that out there. And they're using it in Europe right now and in Mexico, and they only allow coletoxin to be used in the United States in conjunction with chemo and radiation. In other words, you're putting your foot on the gas and the brakes at the same time. It's in my book.
So you're basically doing a burnout.
Yeah.
Gas and brake burnout.
It made me think about this. When I heard about the fever, and the higher the fever, the greater the success survival rate, by the way. And it made me wonder about all these traditions, like in the Scandinavia, the American Indians, these sweat lodges, the sweat lodges, there's a thing that's been known for a long time and almost totally forgotten now because of all these stupid vaccines. That kids, for example, these fever-inducing infections, like I had measles, mumps, chickenpox. My generation, we're the healthiest generation in the United States right now, because we lived a relatively normal life. They had, I think, a polio vaccine. There was never a polio virus, by the way. That was one of the first frauds. Never existed. Yeah, and it was caused by that dust, I forget what they call it now, that sprayed all this dust around, and at the time they thought it was safe. I can't remember what it was, and it was toxic. The polio was caused by toxic. We still have polio, but they don't call it polio anymore. And it's because all the drugs and things and the other poisons that we're giving people, exposing people to these days. Okay, I'll let y'all keep going.
I was enjoying that.
In my book. These stories are in my book.
That's right. Folks, it's in the book.
Yeah.
In the show notes, up above, down below, depending on where you're watching or listening to us. Yeah. If you agree, or like I said earlier, agree or disagree with anything that David has said tonight, please, we want you to do your research.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power. Don't you remember the little cartoons on Saturday morning? Knowledge is power.
Yeah, I was a grown-up already, but yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I had a question, but it just kind of went.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I get carried away.
It's my imbalanced chromosomes. Oh, I was gonna say, so you were talking about the high fevers and the sweat lodges and things like that. Do you think that the human body has the capability of healing itself without.
Are you kidding? Of course.
And I don't mean like if you get a cut, it heals. I'm telling you, like if you end up sick, and we all know, I mean, if you end up with the flu, you get under some blankets, you sweat for a day or so, and you break the fever.
We've been on this planet for over 100,000 years. We must be able to heal ourselves.
Okay. Yeah, valid. I mean, I'm going to say I am one of those people that
heal ourselves better than ever before, though, and we're doing
that. Is true. I'm one of those people that I don't take a lot of medications. I don't like medications. Yeah. The strongest thing that I ever really have to take when I take something is maybe an ibuprofen, and I still don't like to take those. I will suffer first, as Mr. Mark knows. He's seen me on some bad days, but in pain. Do you think that too many people rely on medications?
Of course. They've been trained to for decades. It's a habit. It's habitual. The poor little kids, think of all those injections they get while they go into school, and it's harming and killing them, and all the pills that people are taking, it just all these external chemicals, these $1 trillion industry things that we're putting in our bodies, it's killing us. And I think it's by design. I really, honest to God, do. I think that part of why they're spraying all that crap in the air and doing all this stuff and destroying the economy, all of this, these are weapons right now, and there's no one weapon. And unfortunately, they've gotten away with this for so long that people just have a hard time seeing it, except now. That's one of the blessings of this COVID catastrophe. It's the first time that the same thing happened to the whole world. I remember John Rappaport called me on the phone February of 2020. He died recently. He was a good buddy, one of the AIDS warriors, journalists. And he called me on the phone. He said, "Dave, you got to get in this fight on this COVID thing." And I said, "John, no, we did the AIDS, the SARS, the MERS, the Zika, and all that kind of stuff. It'll just go away like the rest of them." And then I changed my mind in 30 seconds. I said, "No, when did everybody in the world agree to do the same thing at the same time and use the exact same language?" And then I said, "This is World War III." And it is. And I have been doing interviews. I've been working with lawyers on 4 continents since 2020. Oddly enough, the first one to contact me was Ben Clemens in Melbourne, Australia. And how do you know about me? Why call me? He wanted me to help him understand COVID, SARS. Why me, though? I don't know. He never told me. I have to ask him. He's still around having video things and all that. And he contacted me, and then I worked with, he's a lawyer there, worked maybe 10 months maybe, and then some lawyers in Northern Europe, South Africa, and the United States. I'm working several lawyers here in the United States right now on various cases. And so I have been active since February of 2020.
We're getting very close to running out of time.
Yes.
I have a question for you, sir. This is my last question. So you don't have to ask me if I have a last question. This is it.
I figured. I saw the time.
We have, lucky us, around 2 million people who will eventually watch or listen to this program sooner or later, this particular episode. In just a few sentences, what would you like them to know?
Oh, Lord. God.
Read his book.
Yeah, read my book. I appreciate you saying it. The thing is do what we're doing that COVID brought out. Talk to each other. It's better if you don't agree, because that'll give you practice, to see other people who disagree, so that you'll feel comfortable enough to disagree and be open about it rather than keep it secret. I mean, a lot of the people, I think staying quiet is the worst thing you can do. And of course, the key is not to hold it against anybody. Like I said, being a scientist, I've probably been wrong many, many more times than you guys, because I was dealing with, these questions, scientific questions, and publishing stuff. And most of the most of the literature is wrong. So we wouldn't even have a reason to be if you had to be right all the time. We're wrong almost all the time.
And I would like to thank you for your service.
I was going to as well. Yes.
No.
At the beginning of the show, folks, if you were joining us late, David is a Vietnam vet, served our country. So we always thank our vets, and you'll hear me close the show that way. So with that, we are just a little over time. So we want to thank David for taking time out of his busy schedule, because he's got a very busy schedule, to talk a little bit about some serious subjects. We had agreements, we had disagreements, which is probably another first on the show, which is great. But yeah, everything you need to know about David is in the show notes, up above, down below, depending on where you're watching or listening to us. Go to his website, check it out for yourself, draw your own conclusion.
Yes.
You have that right as a human being.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean just here in America. Anywhere in the world that you watch this, you have that right. And you can say, I disagree with everything he said. Bravo for you. Or I agree. Bravo for you. That's drawing your own conclusion. So, Mr. Jeffrey Mark.
Yes.
We know where people can find David. We've plugged his website. We've plugged his socials. Where can they find you?
And doesn't my ruby necklace look nice on television? You can find
so spectacular.
Jeffrey Market is spelled underneath my not very well lit face today. If you're just listening, it's GEOFFREYMARK on Facebook. On Instagram, it's Jeffrey Mark Showbiz, all one word. At LinkedIn, it's at Jeffrey Mark. Wherever those places are, find us. And I answer all questions asked. And by the way, if you're having fun with us today, Ben and I have another show. Well, he produces it and I host it, and it's a music show. GPE, Jeffrey Mark Plays Ella. Every Sunday we release a show based on the music of Ella Fitzgerald on a theme, and I give you all kinds of insider information about how the songs are made, the albums are made, and all about Misfits. So join us for that, because Ben is a splendid producer as well as a host. So join us for that, and join us here, and God bless all the 2 million or so of you who watch us, because we love you.
So again, we want to thank David for taking time out of his schedule. Please check the show notes up above or down below. His website and all his links are there. As far as I go, in my hiatus partner, who's, enjoying the golden years, as he says he's doing now with his wife, you can go to stilltoking.com. You can find out everything you want to know about things that we're involved in: the novel, the TV series, animations, comic books, this amazing show. All 7 seasons are cataloged there. You can go back and watch some of your favorites. You can go back and watch some of your not so favorites. It's okay. We don't mind. But in all seriousness, to all our veterans and first responders, we want to thank you for doing what you do, so people like us can come up here and do what we're doing. Stay safe. We'll see you next week. We're out.
God bless and have a happy.